Hey, how are you doing today? We're going to start out with our kicking off our second of three presentations about getting the start right. And let me just open up this presentation and we will get going. As you can see, a lot of the ideas are not mine. I'd like to do a shout out at the beginning to Chris Parno, and he is the sprint coach and relay coach at Minnesota State Mankato, and the user of many of these ideas and the sharer of all these good ideas. So what we're going to do today is we're continuing on our journey. We have already talked about part one, and that's block setup. A little bit lengthier presentation. Second part here that we're going to be talking about is the product of a good part one, and that's going to be the second step out of the blocks through transition to full running height. I want to send a message right now. We put a circle around it here that this process is, we are not in a hurry on this. It sounds funny because we're in a sprint race, and it's really a drag race against our opponents in there, but we are going to be powerful, and we're just not in a real big hurry to get there because we've got some things that we need to do tactically before we get to full running height. Then we've got a third short presentation where coming a little bit later, and then we're going to be doing some drills and looking at block drills and just explaining it. So keep up to speed with us here, and we're going to be able to get you to a really good place really quickly with starting blocks. Wanted to just take a look, a snapshot at this particular athlete. You're going to see a lot of really good things going on. Going to standardize some language here. You've seen this one before, no doubt. You can see the power angle that we're catching with the yellow line here. This is called the neutral position, and what it means is the ear, the shoulder, the hips, shoelaces are all in the same line. Notice that the arms and the knees are about as far apart from each other and as far displaced from each other as you can get. So big arm swing and bringing that knee through high as possible is a really good idea. And you'll see that really when you do these things, the first and the second bullet here, the big thing is the bullet or the body's going to get shot forward out of there, and you're going to get far away from the blocks every time that you powerfully drive your foot to the ground. And I want you to, we just have an arrow here as well. Notice that there's a shortcut that the heel is going to take as it comes underneath the green dot there. We want the knee to come up, no doubt about it. The pathway, though, to get the knee up is that heel is going to be just sliding below the support knee or where that green dot is, okay? So we're going to take a look at this before we start the video, and this is a sprinter who ran, actually is Olympian, that ran for Mankato, Minnesota State Mankato. And he has got some serious skills, an Olympia world finalist, and we're going to be doing it. One of the things I want you to watch are this transition process, and that's that we're down in the blocks, both 4-point stance, and then when we put big force into the ground, the angle coming off the block pedal, and if we look at that yellow line, that neutral position right through head and hips and shoelaces, that's what we're denoting here, I guess, by the lines. And we are pushing, and the pushing is going to happen behind the hip, behind the center of gravity. Notice that as we push, we're driving, and we would know how to do this in Minnesota. If you've ever tried to push a car out of a snowbank, you need to have your feet behind your hips and really put the big force in there. And ultimately, once things get going, the car gets going, and you're done applying force, you're going to be pretty much standing tall. And this tall position here is when the hips are underneath the shoulders. You're going to see big arm and knee displacement. You're going to see that he is actually pushing back as he comes through there. We're going to watch that one more time. His foot placement is actually right under the hips, and he drives and pushes that ground right underneath him. This angle that we're talking about right here is the same angle that we're talking about right here, and we are not in a hurry to get standing up. The more powerful the pushes, the longer the the acceleration phase to get to transitioning to full running height, the better off we're going to be. Might not show up right away, but it'll be there eventually. All right, and we're going to move on to the next slide. Now, somehow, some way, we have to be able to slow things down so that we can talk about it a little bit, and that's what we have attempted to do here with some video clips. Now, the idea of coming out of the starting blocks when we're in a good setup, and we've already covered that in our first presentation, and when that goes well, really what we're doing is we're shooting like an arrow coming off a bowstring. We are shooting our hips forward. Notice that when we do that, when we come forward, again, arms are far apart, hands and knees are about as far away as they can possibly get. This is no exaggeration, folks. The farther you can swing that arm back and the farther you can bring that hand up by your ear, they call that say what and get off me. The say what hand is the one that comes up by the ear, and then the get off me would be if like somebody was bugging you from behind and you just swing that arm back. This line that we're looking at right here is the same line that we were tracking when we were looking at transition. Again, that's that power line as they come out the blocks, neutral position, right through the ear, hips, shoelaces. And that's this graphic right here. We're trying to do all kinds of things to just sort of get you thinking about what you're doing with every step that you need to be. We are not in a hurry to get tall, to get from the second, this would be the second step coming out of the blocks, and then this would be full running height. The more pushes we can get in there, the more powerful pushes, the more you're going to like how things are going for you at the finish line. We don't want to be in a hurry to stand up too tall too quick because we just have lost all kinds of potential power building. As we roll through the information here, I realize some of it is a little bit sciencey, but just a reminder that that heel recovery needs to come underneath the support knee. We want that heel to go straight line and that knee to come up high, so that heel is going to sweep below the knee. What we're talking about here is hard driving. Again, push, push, pushing, ram and jam. And that would be for, in reality, it's probably about 7 to 8 steps. Great if we can get a few more. But just remember to yourself that you're continuing to push, to apply force, to push, 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 push. When you are tall, you are done with force production. Your technique changes to a little bit different thing, but anything to be gained from the start is over as soon as you get tall. This equation here is just a reminder that stride length, and that's how many inches that you when you blast off a 1 foot, and then there's no feet touching the ground, and then you land on the other foot. That's stride length. And stride frequency times stride frequency, and that's how quickly your stride can turn over, equals velocity. And velocity, my friends, is what we are looking for. We're in the velocity building business, and that's why we do the techniques that we do. Okay. Now, as you've seen here in lots of different ways, so still shots and videos, the shin angle and the body angle start pretty low. You can measure and you can see, and we've talked about this in the first video, when you come out, the lower the shin angle, the more powerful the action is against the track. So again, we want to be driving backward, and we want to be driving and sweeping that heel below the knees. Really, the task, and I like this quote a lot, this is from Charles Clinton, is a sprint coach for the emerging elite with USATF, and he works with the best of the best nationally. He really kind of breaks it down for us. The basic task of a sprinter is to apply force in an optimal time. A fast break from the blocks could give an advantage early in the first few movements, but this can be lost quickly when the athlete has been hurrying and has failed to apply force impulse over the required time, resulting in a poor initial speed. poor final speed too. So again, young athletes get in such a hurry coming out of the blocks. Get out of here, you stupid blocks! I'm tired of you. I just want to run. And they pop up out of the blocks. They're at full running height. They're at this kind of running height way back here in the race, and it probably looks pretty good from folks in the stands that. The person they've come to watch is leading after about 25 or 30 meters. The problem is they didn't get much force applied to the ground. And don't measure a start by what happens in the first 10 steps of the first 25 to 30 meters. Go ahead and measure, look at about 2/3 of the way down, about 60 yards, something like that. And then you're going to tell what kind of a start you really get, because this drive phase is such a big deal. It's really an interesting concept here that you have to master, because when you hurry, you're probably going to hurt your final time. You're always, of course, in a hurry when you're in a sprint, but when you try and speed through this process and just punch, you kind of pitter pat your feet on the ground and get to a tall standing position sooner than you normally would, it'll look good at the beginning, but it'll leave you disappointed at the end. Just a reminder, as we talk about that too, as we were in a previous slide, transition, you can really starts anywhere from about 10 to 25 meters. This is where you've come out of the blocks, you've touched once, you've touched twice, and you're really driving. That's acceleration. And then transition is when you smoothly go from low shin angle. Originally, you started with two hands and two toes that were on the ground in the starting blocks, and you drive yourself, you push yourself, you transition yourself to full running height, taking advantage of every single step. What you're doing when you have reached transition is that your posture changes as you're tall, because your shoulders are right on top of your hips, your center of mass. And again, you just practice that, but it's acceleration, transition, and then this max velocity is when you're racing and you're turning over as fast as you can. We always talk about that as sort of like when you're out pedaling a bike on a slight decline. You're going pretty fast, and your feet have really got to turn over for you to just to keep your feet on the pedals, and that's kind of what the max velocity thing is about. We want max velocity after we've had an awesome acceleration phase. I don't think it naturally comes that it's a seamless progression, but we're going to work enough, and we're going to do a whole bunch of starts and work on the smoothness from big pop and big acceleration skills, push, and we're going to transition to get you into max velocity. I want you just with new eyes to look at a slightly different sprinter here. Again, this is a really talented All-American from the Minnesota State Mankato. We're going to get a chance here in slow motion and notice that he is driving. Notice that backward drive of his shins as he's pulling back. He's pretty much at full running height right there. I'll watch him one more time. Keep in mind these lines that are up here. And how many steps can he get before he's at full running height? I think a good sprint coach would say the more of these, the more drive steps that you can get in before you get tall, the better your start is. All right. I want you to watch the same things. We're getting a little bit better camera angle here from one of the best I've ever seen. And we're lucky to catch him in slow motion here. Notice the power coming right down the shin. Notice that the contact is happening behind. When he's driving off, the foot is contacting, and the pushing is happening behind, drives on the back side of his hip. And then this power line that we're talking about, that neutral position as he drives himself upright, and he follows this acceleration pattern. We've got just a couple slides here. This is probably for all the speed geeks here. But we have lots of people that are interested in accelerating, but you can kind of look at these considerations, but just know that this is a reminder for coaches as well as a reminder for some things that you need to do better as well. And just some, we can try not to get real sciencey here, but there is a little bit of information and what it looks like and what we can see as coaches sometimes.